Mark Kerr was by far the best athlete in mixed martial arts back then, and he had the most abhorrent, staunch fall off because he just simply could not get out of his own way. His predilection for crazy women, you know, and drugs and just self sabotage. It ultimately it ruined him.
Welcome back to All Road, ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen, maybe one or two ladies, maybe not. Eric, how are you today?
I don't know. I'm not as good as you, which is normal. As everyone should, well, not everyone knows, but everyone should know. Your wife just had a baby. There's another
Yes.
DiGiacomo that has entered planet Earth, has entered the earthly realm. So you are no doubt filled with massive quantities of both stress and joy simultaneously. As a man
And
who has two
caffeine.
children,
And
yeah,
caffeine.
yep, that's it, dude. As a man who's been walked down this road twice already, I know exactly what you're feeling. The only difference for me, actually, how old is Dom? I always forget.
Dom's 3.
Okay, so it's similar age gap between Josephine and my son Leo, but I will say that I'm intrigued by the sibling dynamic when it's same sex because they compete for the same type of attention, same type of toys, type of thing. My daughter has been amazing with my son, and it's because he doesn't care about any of those stuffed animals. He
Yeah.
just he just wakes up and chooses violence. He just wants to break stuff, climb on stuff, knock shit over, and my daughter just wants to take care of the house. Even though she has gotten really into Predator, which was a turn that I did not see coming. Okay.
I mean,
She's not even remotely afraid of the movie at all. I obviously am giving her the parental screening, as you and I both have Predator virtually memorized, so I know when to
yes.
skip. In particular, some of Hawkins's jokes not acceptable for a young kid, but you realize the ending of Predator is basically a silent film. The last 30 minutes, it's just Arnold in the jungle building stuff. And so
Yeah.
there's no profanity or anything. It's just, and kids, they just want to see the monster. So like we'll
True.
watch it and she's like, Daddy, I just want to see the Predator. So I'm like, all right, fine. And I watched that. And then I watched Alien versus Predator again, skipped around a little bit. And she was like enamored by the Predator being a good guy. Like, the Predator is fighting with the humans. And it's interesting, good filmmaking, you could tell who the good guy or the bad guy is, especially in those types of movies, just by appearance. Like, no one looks at the alien and is like, I want to be on that thing's team.
No. Yeah.
No one. Yeah, and honestly, if you think that way, we can't be friends. In fact, you should be jailed. You should be fucking jailed. Okay, like you got problems. Okay, so we're watching it. She's like, Daddy, I really hope the Predator just flushes the alien down the toilet. I mean, there's a real problem with these things. So and I'm like
How
trying
old
to.
is she?
She'll be 5 in a month,
Wow.
and she's
That's
like, dude, we're watching it, and like there's a scene in Alien versus Predator where Lance Henriksen confronts the Predator, right, and the Predator grabs him, and through his like thermal vision or whatever, sees that he's like riddled with tumors. Okay, and puts him down because he doesn't want to kill an old sick man. Okay, so my
it's
daughter's
not
like,
not sport. It's not
yeah,
it's not fun
exactly.
anymore.
Doesn't kill a pregnant woman in Predator 2 and doesn't kill children, right? So my daughter's like, Daddy, why didn't the Predator kill that guy? Like he's got a gun. And I was like, the Predator, he's got a code. That's his deal. So like the next night we're at dinner, we're eating, and she just blurts out, she's like, the Predator doesn't kill old people, sick people, or children, and just like goes back to eating.
And your wife knows she's watching these movies with you. This is not
Yeah,
like a
that's part
covert
of like
operation.
our kind of like routine. We watch a little bit of a
Okay.
movie at night before we go to bed, and like she's just always liked scary stuff.
Yeah.
Just has never been affected by it. Like big monsters, it just doesn't bother her to the point of where like I feel guilty, like did I mess my kid up or something? But I don't know. Like she loves it. and it's a weird thing for a little girl to kind of like be into. But she loves it. She loves the Thriller video, all those types of things. She just loves Halloween and zombies,
Yeah.
so doesn't affect her.
Yep. So
You
does my
told me I
son,
was
who's
insane
3.
for putting the movie on this young, but I skipped around. I didn't show her the part with the skinned corpses.
So yeah, my brother's 8 years older than me, and he
Oh
showed
wow,
me a
there's
lot
a
of
big
movies
gap.
probably when I was too young to see these movies. Like he
Yes.
showed me Scarface when I was like 8, and like the chainsaw in the shower scene where the guy, like the Colombian guy, is cutting through the guy's head. I'm like, what am I watching right now? Like I was a little traumatized, but then you just get over it. And then I was watching Braveheart on loop, constantly watching all that gore. But to watch Predator at 5, she's gonna be an old soul. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
She's
I
gonna
mean,
be
she
very
already she
mature for
already
her
kind of
age.
is. Yeah, I mean, it's really endearing. But I'm hoping for your situation. I saw the pictures that you posted. Obviously, seems like Dom has taken very well to having a little brother. He's seems to be already protective and
Yes.
and and, and
Yeah.
loving.
He
And it's
likes him a
easy
lot.
now for him in that, like, basically the fourth trimester, as they call it, the kid is a lump. He's
Lump
just,
phase. We
yeah,
call it lump phase.
yeah,
He doesn't do anything. He just eats and poops and pees and
that's
that's
it.
it, and sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's no competition for attention at this point because he doesn't require much attention. And he doesn't want to, like you said, take any Dom's toys there's no, maybe when he's a little older, it'll get more contentious. But for the most part, right now, it's just Dom waves to him once in a while and then goes about his business and helps feed him. And he's a good big brother. I was worried he was going to be really jealous.
Didn't
And
you say that? So my daughter initially was quite nasty to me for some time and was very attached to my wife. And it seemed like you described the opposite type of thing going on in your house. So like it was hard for my daughter at first because Camille went back to breastfeeding. She went back to like doing all this maternal, like, newborn stuff. And a lot of Josephine's routine she was used to doing with my wife, and she went back to now she's doing it
yeah,
with me. It turned out to be the best possible thing for my relationship with my daughter because it like literally forced us to spend a ton of time together.
nice.
And now it's been like the past year, she and I have become like so tight. We're like, before then, if I was on fire, she might not have saved me. So like there could like there could be, when you bring another kid into the house and the other parent has to do more stuff depending on what the roles were and what everything else was, like
Yeah.
I bed share with my daughter, so I handle her nighttime routine. I instituted my own nighttime routine. Like I'll read her a book, we watch a little bit of a movie. We've kind of like established like our own little like inside jokes. Like yesterday we're eating lunch and I'm like, all right, Josephine, out of Sonic, Knuckles, the Predator, Godzilla, who else did I pick? A Velociraptor. It's like you have to pick two to protect you from all things on this earth. And she's like, I'm taking the
That's a
raptor
good question.
and I'm taking the predator. I'm like, oh, you're nuts for not taking Godzilla, but whatever. Like these are now the conversations that she and I have. Like, but she's like, who am I fighting? And I'm like, how about the alien queen? She's like, might have to take Godzilla for that one, Daddy. Like it's like
That's great.
so we have these bizarre like bro conversations, like and when you watch these movies with kids, they ask questions that like you forgot existed. Just like they'll just their observations are just like, oh, I've suspended disbelief for so long that like that is actually a valid critique of what I'm looking at. Like the scene in
Yeah.
Predator where they take down the base, she's like, Daddy, why don't the bad guys just shoot the big man? I mean, he's just standing there. And I'm like, that's an excellent question.
That's exactly right. People in the late 80s didn't really realize that either. So
Yeah.
adults in the 80s didn't realize that.
Dude, I'll say one thing and then I want to go right into Smashing Machine. There's
Yeah,
one part of Predator that's like the movie's pretty grounded for a Schwarzenegger movie. It's before Arnold became a meme. It's only got one or
sure.
two one-liners. It's very grounded and it's not as self-aware as a lot of the later ones were, where it's like, okay, we know he's kind of ridiculous and we're going to play it up. But there's one part of the movie in particular that just like cracks me up because it's the most like 80s nonsense. When they take down the guerrilla encampment and the Russian guys, I think, get in the chopper and they try to take off. Okay. And they machine gun the guys in the chopper like they're dead. And then even after the guys are dead, they just grenade it just to blow it up. Like you could have had you could have had some information, you could have looked at what they had on them, but no, like they're just grenade launching into the chopper. They're dead. It's another massive explosion. And the other part when Jesse Ventura, he takes out the sentry in the tree with Old Painless, and the guy just goes on fire. Like I don't even understand. Like he just goes fully on fire and falls out of the tree. And you're like, how? Like what is that? How is that possible? Like
Why
I don't
not?
understand.
Why not? That's why. Yeah, I mean, that movie's so good, and I would argue that it has one of Arnold's most quoted lines, "Get to the chopper." That's
Oh
probably the
yeah,
biggest internet sensation of Arnold's besides the Arnold tune. Have you ever heard Arnold tune where they just
yes,
put Arnold's voice over Rihanna lyrics and over
yes,
everything?
it's
I
amazing.
can't get enough of it. I
Yeah.
just can't get enough of
Well,
it. Whenever I
Predator
see it, I will
had a
stop to
whole
watch it.
second life because of internet memes. Like the Predator
Yeah,
handshake meme, like relaunched that movie into
it's true.
pop culture. Like
Yeah,
single-handedly relaunched it. Obviously, Get to the Chopper was one of like the earliest internet memes. To a certain extent, One Ugly Motherfucker is also right there.
yeah.
But like, dude, it's just so funny that my daughter doesn't care, that it doesn't bother her.
I'm so impressed that she's not terrified because the predator is scary. It's a scary thing for even for like an adult. It's like a scary looking creature when he takes his mask off and his the teeth open up. Like that's pretty terrifying. So for her to have the maturity to deal with that and not
Well,
have
also think of
nightmares,
it this
I'm very
way:
impressed.
the the scary part about any good movie, like it's kind of a slasher movie in the jungle, so to speak,
It is.
is actually the pacing and the sense of dread. And she's just too young to pick up on that.
Fair enough.
She just
Okay.
she just sees like the heat vision. She's like, "Whoa, that's really cool," and sees a bunch of guys. Like
Got
she
it.
doesn't
Got it.
feel like she doesn't understand why it's scary. She doesn't understand like what makes it so good is that usually in a slasher movie, it's like a dude with a knife kills like 6 chicks. I'm like, I could do that. You know what I mean? Like it's like you, gi- you, gi- you give me the drop on like 6 teenage girls and a butcher knife. I'm taking out at least four. Like like it's over. It's a wrap. Okay.
Stop challenging my
Yeah, yeah.
my
But I can't
intellect at
take out
all.
an
Yeah.
army, a unit of special forces commandos in the jungle, right? So like
True.
it's also when you just understand like who these people are, it obviously is more terrifying, and she doesn't understand that. She's just
Yeah.
like,
Fair enough. That's a good point.
guys, meatheads with guns, whatever. I have no idea. But speaking of meatheads, I gave you an assignment last week. You rose to the occasion, and I'm dying to hear your take on this. We're going to do an interesting episode this week. It's going to be kind of a double physique of the week, and it's going to be pretty much the whole show because it's a lot to discuss. So, Ian had never seen the documentary The Smashing Machine. Although Ian is a fan of mixed martial arts, he certainly was aware of who Mark Kerr was. For whatever reason, that documentary is hard to find. It just
It
hasn't
is.
been released in any capacity, maybe because Mark Kerr, I don't know if he was ashamed of it or he had no vehicle by which to release it and make more money off of it. Obviously, with the movie The Smashing Machine that's come out, it stands to reason that he's not terribly ashamed of it because it's obviously a docudrama about his life. And so we wanted to discuss Mark Kerr as well as Dwayne Johnson's portrayal of Mark Kerr. Okay. And I mean, you could do this in any order possible, but I figure for me, probably discussing the documentary first would be best. And so
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you, first of all, what did you think of it? Uh, and what were I guess, your takeaways from it? Because it's a very raw and intimate.
It is. It is. I was very surprised that the camera crew was so involved in so many pivotal moments in that time of his life. How did they first of all, why did they start following him? I mean, I know he was on on the come up, but they followed him when he was really not very well known. So it was impressive that they got so involved in his life. I wonder, I'm sure you know about this because you're the encyclopedia, but why did they choose him? How did they get so involved? How did they jump on this so early to make it's a great documentary. It really
It's
is a
amazing.
fantastic, maybe one of my favorites at this point now. But I thought it was great. I think his character, like not that he's playing a character, but who he is and how he acts, he's so well mannered and so polite and so nice and so soft spoken. Like we were having a conversation over the phone. Like if I had a phone call with this guy, I'm like, oh, I could kick this guy's ass. Like it's like Mike Tyson. It's like when you hear his voice alone and you don't see him
Yep.
physically or you don't see what he can do to people. It's like this guy's one of the baddest guys around. Like no way. So I thought it was very crazy how he can just flip that switch. And throughout the documentary, he explains like his emotional connection to fighting, like how
Hmm.
it's such an emotional experience, the rush, the adrenaline. It's the way how he did describe it. He said it's like a snake shedding its skin, and it's like a rebirth for him every time he fights.
Hmm.
And that was pretty powerful because there are a lot of fighters out there who fight for money and do this. I don't know if many of them can say they love it like that, who can
Yeah.
say that it's an outer body spiritual experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but getting kicked and hit and kneed and head butted and in the early days, I thought it was so crazy how he's like, "Oh yeah, they outlawed groin shots, biting, head butting." He goes, "Yeah, this is gonna be different for me." Like, dude, what? Like the head butting? How many knees these people ate and still came back to fight? Like if these days, if somebody had kneed when they were down, it would be over, ref or no ref. The guys back then, man, just a different breed, much tougher, I think. I mean, a lot of Japanese guys later in the film who were just taking straight knees to the face and
So
just
insane
shaking them off
punishment.
and getting
Insane
back.
punishment. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
So, the caveat, I will say, you gave me a little too much credit. I rose to the occasion. I watched the documentary. You did insinuate that The Rock's portrayal wasn't fantastic. Not to spoil anything for anyone. And then I had to pay for the movie, so I didn't pay for it to watch The Rock's. So you can give me your take on The Rock's portrayal of it.
Sure.
We can go further into detail on my take on the documentary. I did think that one of the most impressive things he did was getting over his opiate addiction. I think that is
Yeah.
really underestimated, and people don't understand. Especially he was taking so much. I didn't realize that people and maybe a lot of fighters took those drugs just to absorb damage and not think about how much they were getting hurt, which when you're getting headbutted and bit and shot to the groin, I guess you really can't feel anything because the toughest guys today, if they get like flicked in the nuts, they're really like out of it for 5 minutes. They take the whole time. So I guess if there's no rules back then, you have to be really numb to the pain, and that's probably what started his opiate addiction, I guess, is that he
Hmm.
could cope with all the brutality of early MMA where there was no rules and there were very few rules. I just thought that for him to get to such a high stage in Pride, the Pride Fighting Company in Japan, and then lose, because of his conditioning, his lifestyle, but also because of the opiates, and he was begging people in the locker rooms. I thought that was really kind of sad because I've had a lot of family and friend experience with opioid addiction. So I just thought that was an amazing comeback trail for him, and it's probably the best part of the movie for me was watching him overcome that
Yes.
and come through and come back and compete at the highest level and still win. And that was really for me that was very powerful.
So yeah, you raised a couple points here. I want to touch on them. I'm a huge nerd for MMA, and I have been a Mark Kerr fan for a very, very long time. And before this uh, movie came out, he would talk to anyone that would talk to him because he was much lower profile, and you really had to know who MMA to understand how legendary this guy was and everything else. And so he's been very open about all of these things. He's always felt seemingly like he had very little to hide, especially because of the documentary. Now, it's my understanding that it was a friend of his whom he trusted that shot the documentary,
Wow.
and he only agreed to it because he didn't even know the scope of it. So he basically said he thought it would be like a dude with a camcorder, and he had already agreed to it. And this guy showed up with like a staff of people with booms and all this other stuff, and he was like, "I'm not going to say no now. Like you guys flew across
Yeah.
the country.
Wow.
It is what it is." I do believe that the cameraman saved his life. He did pretty much overdose on camera, and I believe that they
Okay.
were essential in actually getting him medical assistance. So, in
Yeah.
that respect, they saved his life. Obviously, none of the parties involved, potentially even including Mark Kerr himself, were even aware that he had an opioid addiction, or at the very least, the extent of it. So they're thinking that they're doing a documentary on just like this crazy new sport that at the time was being made illegal in the United States. Okay. That's why Kerr and Coleman, all these guys jumped to Japan. There was bigger money,
Sure.
just better presentation. You're a star over there, where here you're like fighting in a gutter and you have very low status. So they thought they were getting that aspect, like a rising star in this new element, and instead they found a guy that was actually damn near rock bottom, and maybe perhaps he didn't even know it, which is what's
Yeah.
so fascinating about it. Now, it's interesting about those guys is because of the way MMA was structured back in the day. And unfortunately, it's really changed now. I think this is part of the reason why the Dagestani guys have been able to run roughshod over so many American fighters. Is nowadays you can actually make money through amateur wrestling. Back then, $30,000 a fight seems like nothing to most people. If you were like a national level wrestling coach, you got paid 30 grand a year.
Wow.
Okay. So for a dude with this high level skill set, who now if he fights 4 times a year, he makes 120, from their perspective, they're swimming in money. Okay. Now because there is more money in amateur wrestling, ironically, because MMA showed how badass it was, a lot of the guys don't go into MMA the way they used to. And so the best American wrestlers or takedown artists don't always come into MMA, but the guys in Dagestan who do Sambo, where there is no money, they're going into MMA instead. And so they've been kind of able to run roughshod partially because of that. Back in the day, a guy like Jordan Burroughs is one of the best American wrestlers of all time. He probably would have fought MMA, but now he's a
Yeah.
millionaire and a multiple time Olympic medalist just from wrestling. Point is, the guys that got into the sport were more intelligent than you thought. If you were Mark Kerr and you went to college in the late 80s, early 90s, this was an era where not everybody went to college. It's harder to get into college. You were college educated. You didn't come out for the draft or something. You were usually going to finish your degree. So the American wrestlers that came into the sport, in many respects, were actually pretty intelligent. Okay, they
Yeah.
were more intelligent than a lot of other guys who were getting into it just because they were adrenaline junkies. These were guys who were like athletes that were taking this on as a sport, not crazy people that are taking this on as like a psychotic challenge. Like I want to see if I
Sure.
can, which is most people.
Most people think that. Most people think it's just crazy people who
Yeah.
want to be brutal and hurt other people. And like he was explaining in that, like you mentioned on our phone call privately, that scene where I think it's one of the opening scenes where he's sitting in the waiting room of his doctor's office
Mm-hmm.
and he's speaking to this older lady and she's asking him why he does it and she doesn't understand it. And he has a very high verbal IQ, by the way. So he is
For
very
sure,
educated
dude.
and
Yeah,
that
I
comes
know.
through.
It takes you back almost. Like it's so bizarre
Yeah.
to see.
You
Yeah.
think he would be a Neanderthal meathead with no vocabulary, but the way he explains things very eloquently, is much smarter than you give him credit for, or than he looks, and he's very unassuming, let's put it that
Yes.
way. But the way he explained it to her, he was just like, yeah, I treated it as a sport. I'm not looking to hurt anyone. And then they flash to him kneeing someone in the nose. And then they cut back to that scene. Yeah, I'm not looking to, I don't want to hurt anybody. I'm not a bad guy, but it should make people uncomfortable sometimes because
Yeah.
it's not normal. It's not this. And it was a very good take on it. And it
He's like
just,
he's like in this blue polo shirt, like just jacked. Okay. And this old lady is like, you do that mixed martial arts? Like, well, actually we take martial arts that have been around for thousands of years and we pit them
that's
against
right.
each other. I come from a wrestling background. I may compete against somebody with a karate background. And she's like, well, I'm uncomfortable. He's like, well, for a lot of people, you should feel that way. And she's like, do you hate your opponent? She goes, he's like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay. And he's just like so tender with this old lady.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is one of the scenes that made it into the movie. A lot of
Is it?
that stuff made it into the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah. But I agree. He's very tender. He has a high
Yeah.
verbal IQ. As you can see with the relationship with his girlfriend, who later became his wife, who is now his ex-wife, Dawn. She's a very sensitive person, needs a lot
Yes.
of support. He's not
Yes.
just some type of like lone warrior who's like, I'm going to go out there and be a savage on my own. He obviously felt like he needed support. Mark Kerr came. He was very tight with his mother. I believe he had a briefly contentious relationship with his family. He had worked, I believe, as like a roadie for a rock band, like during a hiatus from wrestling. And that's actually where he started to develop like substance abuse problems. So he had problems with drug addiction and alcohol pretty much his whole life. And according to him, wrestling delayed that from becoming catastrophic because he was a good wrestler and was essentially like, okay, I can't go and win or be at my absolute best if I'm drunk all the time, clearly. Um, Now, he never qualified for the Olympics, although he came awful close. He beat Kurt Angle several times in amateur
Wow.
competition. Angle eventually got the better of him towards the end of their career. He beat Randy Couture to win one of his Division One. I think he was a one-time Division One champion. So he beat Randy Couture in the finals. Randy Couture took
Okay.
second in the Division One tournament. And I believe he competed at 197. So that's, for context, at his biggest, he was competing at 260 pounds. I mean, pure fucking shredded muscle. Okay, we're
Yeah.
not talking
Very
like
lean
Tank
for that,
Abbott
that size.
potbelly. We're talking like pure muscle with a tapered waist and enormous shoulders and legs. Okay, um, and he's also about my height, so that's big. That's a lot of muscle, especially to take into a combat sport environment. Now, his relationship with opioids is interesting, and he's discussed this more off of the documentary, and so has Boss Rutan, believe it or not. And Boss, I don't know what kind of relationship they have now, but Boss has pulled no punches on Mark, for better or worse. Um, Mark Kerr was very open about dealing with the mental stress of fighting. That was why he took the opioids. That the rush and, like, I guess, like the huge dopamine hit from the drugs just made it easier to deal with the stress
Huh.
of the fight is coming. A lot of times he would fight while he was high because it just
Yeah.
helped turn off the fear response that he would have going into something like this. And, a lot of people don't know this. If you've been around MMA fighters, some of them never get over that insane nervous energy. Like, it's been said many times that, like, George St. Pierre he needed someone to watch him before a fight because he was a borderline, like, a flight risk. Like,
Really.
he was so scared to get in the cage. Nobody got in, he was fine.
It's like any contact sport. After the first hit, all the butterflies go away. Right. Like, I remember in
Exactly.
football growing up on the bus ride to the next school going to play. After that first crack, it becomes real, and you're like, "Oh, this isn't so bad anymore." But the anticipation, like most things, is like if you're going on a roller coaster and it looks terrifying. It's the line you're on that's the scariest part. Typically,
Yes.
once you're on it, it starts to get better and better.
Yeah.
I thought one of my favorite parts of the whole movie was he went to Japan and he had, I guess, his first official loss. At first, it was a loss. Then it was later ruled a no contest because the rules had changed in Pride. They were trying to make it, I guess, less brutal. So they were originally in, I think, Pride 1 through 6 or 1 through 7, they allowed knees to a down and kicks to a downed opponent. So if your opponent was hands and knees or laying on the floor, you can knee them in the face, kick them in the face. I mean, absolutely brutal. But so he played among those rules for the first couple of Pride events, and then they changed it for this event. But there was a lot of language barriers, it seemed. The Japanese refs didn't know what was going on. The martial artists from different countries didn't know. And I think he was fighting a Russian guy, Igor, what was his last name?
Ukrainian. His name was Igor Vovchanchin. He's a legend.
Yeah.
He's
The
a
punching
legendary
machine,
fighter.
right? Didn't
Yeah.
they say the
Yes.
punching machine?
Yeah.
So he fought him. It was a great fight overall, but he started to get kneed when he was down to the head over and over again. And then they finally called it, or I forget what happened. They called the fight. They gave the win initially to Igor, and then Mark Kerr, as jacked as he is, he storms in the back. He storms off. You can see he's really upset. He's emotional. He's about to cry. And he gets to the officials in the back who organized the fight, and he's like, "Listen, you know what? Listen, that was not good. That was not good. Bad ref. Oh, if any moment for you to while out and twist someone's head off for, getting screwed over essentially on one of your biggest stages that you've ever fought on, the biggest opportunity you've ever had to get kind of not conned, but cheated out of your win or out of a fair shot to compete because you were playing against the rules that were changed, and now he is not." But I mean, he walked back there like Bill Goldberg, like in the WWE, I mean, and then when he gets back to the officials, he's like, no, let's tell him, no, bad ref, this was not good. Like, just, and then he has that moment alone where I'm sure most fighters who lose fights have, where he just breaks down and all the emotion comes rushing through and all the sacrifice. And granted, he said he didn't train that hard for that fight, but a lot of mental and physical preparation go into these fights, and it's a big peak and a big valley, I'm sure, before and afterwards. So
Yeah. I think he struggled with the fact that the sport was evolving a little bit, and initially it was just so easy for wrestlers of his caliber to win. It was so easy. No one could stop you. And when they had headbutts on the ground, like, dude, if you sit in someone's guard and you can headbutt them and their head is against the cage, dude, you're gonna kill them. I mean, they
Yeah,
don't have to create any separation, which you could use to submit them or stand up to do serious damage to you, right? So, like, the rules back then were just so in favor, and no one had the skill set to deal with these top level wrestlers. Like, they were the first top tier athletes that had ever been unleashed on mixed martial arts, and everybody was playing catch up. I mean, realistically, for years. I mean, it wasn't
yeah,
until you saw someone like Chuck Liddell, who was a wrestler, that was able to stop takedowns consistently and actually stand and bang on the feet. So, like, nobody was prepared for that skill set, for that type of
yeah,
athlete, and certainly nobody was prepared for that degree of PED use/abuse. Now, Mark Kerr has been very open and honest about steroids. He clearly has or had or has a passion for strength training. Like, I remember seeing an interview with him where he was talking about maybe starting to do like strength training content on his Instagram to talk about how he was able to lift the numbers that he lifted. We're talking about a professional fighter that had damn near a 2,000 pound raw total. Squatting and pulling in
outrageous.
in the mid sevens, benching in the fives, which when you're doing a lot of other stuff is just freakish. I mean, that
Almost
is
impossible,
it's I
unheard
mean,
of.
it's unfathomable, especially when you consider that he's not like 330 pounds. That's actually,
Yes,
like, some guys might be able to do that if they're like super heavyweight, meaning they don't even fight in America because that division doesn't exist in America. Uh, but to do that at like a lean 260 while still doing cardio and sparring, it's beyond freakish. I mean, it's just so astonishingly impressive. But by his own admission, it was overkill, right? And at his peak, he was
yeah,
fighting in the 260s, and then I believe when he got to Pride, he started getting down to the 240s and 250s.
yeah. I think the last quarter of the movie, him and Mark Coleman, who I learned a lot about in this movie. I didn't know much about him. I always saw him on highlights. I didn't know much about his story, and it was really cool to see their friendship and their relationship too. But he was like, Kerr, how much do you weigh? And I think he said like 107 kilograms, which I think is around 235 pounds or so, something like that. And then Coleman was about 104 kilograms at that point, and they were in the same tournament. So there was a chance that they were going to actually have to compete against each other as longtime friends, which, I'm sure it happens more nowadays that training partners who are in the same weight class and friends uh, have to fight against each other.
Not as much
But
as you think, dude. Not
really
not as much as you
interesting.
think. I mean, it's a big pet peeve of Dana White's. He hates it when guys say that. Okay, yeah, you'll
Yeah.
have guys that they may have shared a training room. Like, George St. Pierre fought Matt Serra. George St. Pierre would train a lot at the Henzo Gracie gym they call it the Blue Basement in Manhattan.
Okay.
And for that fight, he was effectively thrown out. He wasn't allowed to train there because Matt Serra
Oh,
had seniority. Okay,
okay.
back in the day, there weren't a lot of gyms. So yes, you might be in the training room with somebody, but like they weren't tight with you. They weren't like on your team per se. Like, it wasn't
Got
like
it.
you cornered them. Let's put it that way. You were not fighting people that you cornered very, very often. Okay. And
Understood.
guys would go to great lengths to avoid that. I mean, Dan Henderson never fought Matt Lindland, who never fought Randy Couture. Okay. Henderson competed at 205 and 185, Lindland at 85, Couture at 205. They were always strategically in different organizations or in different weight classes. That's just not something that people were willing to do, because you could call it professionalism, but you're also basically trying to kill somebody for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And some people might not be able to get over that, but it would have been a big deal, I think, for them to fight. Would have been an interesting matchup, but as we see in the documentary, Kerr just he can't keep it together, and
Mentally. Mentally, it
yes,
seems.
and it's interesting because one of the things that I realized as I close in on 40, and I'm like embarrassed to admit that I just figured this out, right? But like, there's talent everywhere. Most people succeed or fail based on whether or not they can get out of their own way. It has
True.
very little to do with their talent. That's there and it matters, but like, Mark Kerr was by far the best athlete in mixed martial arts back then, and he had the most abhorrent, staunch fall off because he just simply could not get out of his own way. His predilection for crazy women, you know, and drugs and just self sabotage. It ultimately it ruined him, and he was never the same after that 2000 Grand Prix. I mean, he came back a few years later. He was fat. He had suffered a lot of really bad knockouts in Pride, and then he just kept
Yeah.
fighting because he needed money. But that documentary actually
It's sad.
shows like the last time that he was like at the apex of the sport, right? Whereas Coleman, who I believe also later developed an opioid addiction, and
Really.
and subsequently beat it, like that tournament was part of like a rebirth of his career. Coleman was at the top of the game in the UFC. Some guys figured out how to stop takedowns. He was also absolutely doing too much steroids and was just gassing out way too quickly. He suffered some really bad knockouts in the UFC after he'd become totally exhausted, and he lost
Vicious.
some weight, got his shit back together, won the 2000 Grand Prix, and had a whole rebirth and fought for another almost 10 or 12 years after that. Okay. But Kerr, ultimately, he just could not get out of his own way. And as someone who's a fan of the sport, I've got probably the first 15 or 20 Pride events on DVD in my house. I mean, I've loved this for so long. Even like you could like Kerr is just a wrestler's. I mean, a Coleman's like a wrestler's wrestler, just like big, strong, tough, but he's not very fluid with his movement. He's a you know
Stiff. He's stiff.
he's very stiff. Where Kerr, who was bigger, actually moved better. He
Yeah.
had better kicks. They both did not have great head movement. That's not something you pick up very easily. And on top of that, at the time you're still thinking I'm in a wrestling stance, so you're much more coiled and ready to shoot than bobbing and weaving and trying to set up takedowns off of punches. But
Yes.
Kerr had much better kicks. He was much more flexible, probably physically stronger, but ultimately just could not keep the train on the tracks. And the opioids, in conjunction with steroids, in conjunction with toxic relationships, really screwed him up. And in fact, he has blamed growth hormone abuse for part of the reason why he loses to Fujita in the 2000 Grand Prix.
Oh yeah.
He claimed, and this is common, like GH can mess with your blood sugar. It can cause your blood sugar to spike. There could be a compensatory response, which then causes it to tank down. He claims that he went hypo during that fight, that his blood
He
sugar
mentioned that.
tanked.
I didn't catch that at first, but he
Yeah.
said he was laying on the ground and Boss Rutan was kind of standing over him after that fight, and he said, "Oh, it must be the sugars. It must be the sugars." And like, I didn't
Yes.
know what that meant
Yeah.
at first.
Yes.
Interesting. So
He
it was
had a
growth hormone related decline in his blood sugar.
apparently he was also notoriously like not the most disciplined with his diet. Again, when you're that big, you're burning that many calories. Guys tend to eat a lot of junk food because they just need to
Sure.
keep the weight on. And I think he had a lot of issues holding down like actual calorie dense food around fight time. So apparently he would crush the candies before he went out there, which would cause his sugar to tank when insulin was released. We also don't know
Got it.
if he was using insulin. He might have been using insulin. He hasn't spoken about it to my knowledge. Okay. It's entirely possible that he was using insulin. It's like GH and insulin is a common stack for bodybuilders to take. It
Yeah.
seems insane for a fighter to take insulin because the weight gain from it is so astronomical. It's so anabolic that it seems like it would stack you so far over a weight that you'd be effective at from a cardiovascular performance perspective. But nevertheless, like by his own admission, almost to fight the fear of getting into the cage, he just got so jacked to almost give himself like mental armor that it really, really hurt his ability to perform at the highest level. And I think he said when he got to Pride, he realized like, okay, I'm so big that if I don't finish someone in 5 minutes, I'm basically fucked.
Yeah, I mean, all that muscle, like, that's what the classic line Joe Rogan, all that muscle has to be fed with blood and oxygen.
Yeah.
And every time somebody muscular comes into the cage, that's kind of Joe Rogan's go-to line is, which is true. It's like whenever you see a guy like a Yoel Romero, they're super explosive, or like a Vitor Belfort when he was on TRT or whatever he was on. TRT is a generous term for it. You know, it was like a hurricane for the first like round or two, and then it would really slow down. So if
Mhm.
you could weather the storm, if you could survive that initial barrage and explosive power, that you can kind of outlast him, and all that power really dissipates in the later rounds, and you have
Yes.
much less of a chance of being knocked out down the line because they just can't keep up that same the same force.
A lot of guys who were fast twitch freaks, but knew that and understood it, they I find it interesting how much they accommodated with their style. So like you think of one end, you have like the Diaz brothers, pure slow twitch, who also train slow twitch. So they're like slow twitch freakazoids, and they'll just throw these high volume punches, hundreds of punches, and not get tired. But any one punch is not really going to hurt you. I mean, it would hurt me obviously,
It's
but I mean,
peppering.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the other end of it, these are people who are obviously very successful with this style. You think of Yoel Romero, great example, and Tyron Woodley, another guy who had a very successful run at 170. You always note how they did not throw big combinations. It's too exhausting. When you're a fast twitch freak
Interesting.
and you throw 8 or 10 punches at a time, it takes a long time to
Hmm.
get back to neutral because those muscle fibers have less blood vessels in them. Okay. A super explosive type 2 guy is not going to be as fatigue resistant as a Nick Diaz who can just lay it on you. And so Romero, if you think about him and Woodley, they would systematically wait for one huge punch, one huge knee, and they would explode on you. They would wait to figure out your
Sure.
timing, and their strategy was, I'm going to throw some bombs, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to relax, because if I get
Yeah.
caught up in this chain of an exchange here, if I don't knock you out, the level of fatigue is going to be almost impossible to overcome.
Yeah.
And of course, guys like Kerr and Coleman, I give them all the respect in the world for fighting. They're legends. And getting in the cage or the ring back then in particular took some serious balls because there was no fucking rules. You were in these
Yes.
places where like the crowd could easily kill you if something went awry. I mean, we're talking they have like barbed wire under the ropes here, people. Where you're like, so you can't escape when you're getting beaten to death. Like some of the most visceral, insane shit possible. Like early in the documentary, they're doing like a voiceover showing some of his first fights or whatever, and he's like, "How far will you go? Will you stick your fingers in your opponent's cut and spread it open? Of course you will." And like, think about that was legal back then. Bare
Yeah.
knuckle. I cut
Yeah.
you open,
Bare
and
knuckle.
I could literally hold your head down and dig my fingers into your. That would be like Dana White today. If he saw that, would probably ban you for life because of the image problems that would be associated with that type of
Yeah.
behavior. Okay, but back then that was considered normal. Knees everywhere, elbows everywhere. Just total insanity. And so the mentality it took to get in the cage was pretty crazy. But by the same token, Kerr and Coleman and Kevin Randleman, these guys that were the first top level wrestlers that came over, nobody had an answer for their skill set. That
Actually, for a
cannot
long,
be
long
emphasized
time,
enough.
yeah, for a long, long time, wrestling was the best base to have
For
coming into
sure.
MMA.
Probably still
Now, I'm
is.
not. If you think it still is, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so it holds true. It has so many skills in that one discipline that transfer well to MMA, whereas kickboxers do well, but if they get taken down and they can't defend it, they're helpless. They're
Yeah.
just newborn babies at that point. Jiu-jitsu grapplers or submission grapplers, I should say, aren't very aggressive, aren't very overpowering, so they have to wait to kind of like
Yes.
use their cunning and kind of coax you into a position that you're not comfortable in, and then they can kind of like a snake just eventually consume you, like a Damian Maya, like
It's
those types of
also
people who,
a rule set issue though. So I'll say this: you would see different styles of fighting. Like MMA, we've got 5 minute rounds for a title fight, right? Everything that we do is going to be orchestrated around what can be done in that time frame. Dude, even without strikes, if you put me against a grappler of comparable size and ability, it is almost impossible to take the person down, pass their guard, and submit them in 5 minutes.
yeah,
Okay.
fair enough.
Jiu-jitsu rose to prominence in no holds barred fighting when there was no time limit. Okay. When
Got it.
you could hold someone down and just chip away at them and chip away at them and then eventually submit them. We're talking no decisions, like someone is losing via submission or knockout. Like this is the way
Yeah,
that it's going to be. In 5 minutes, it's really, really tough, especially when no matter how good of a position you earn, that bell rings, they restart you from standing. It'd be a different
yeah. So
story
everything
if
you've earned, everything
is
you've gained, all
gone.
the ground you've gained is gone. So now, what do you think? Though I think it was Eddie Bravo. I think he said that if you punch a jiu-jitsu black belt in the face, he becomes a brown belt. If you punch him again, every time they get hit, because they're not used to being hit, their awareness, their sharpness, their skill set kind of starts to diminish, and they don't have the ability to submit people at the high
There's truth
level
to
when
that.
they start getting,
There's truth to that.
contact like that.
But here's the thing. Sometimes you have jiu-jitsu guys whose game translates really well to MMA, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have a style of grappling that is phenomenal for MMA. Okay. I'll say this, my favorite style of MMA fighter, and not many people have been able to do it because it requires such mastery of jiu-jitsu that in and of itself is the limiting factor. But one of my favorite fighters of all time was Fabricio Verdum. And the reason
Okay.
why was he was so amazing on the ground that people were terrified to take him down. Okay. Like he submitted
Yeah.
Fedor off his back. He submitted Cain
Yeah.
Velasquez off his back. Now, the reason why I love that style is those guys develop crazy, wide open striking games because they're not worried about getting taken down. They can use
Hmm.
whatever footwork they want. Okay. It
Interesting.
doesn't matter. They know that their opponent does not want to go to the ground with them. And so Verdun caught up in striking very quickly because his jiu-jitsu was always going to be better. He didn't have to focus on it. The level of jiu-jitsu in MMA is much lower than in sport jiu-jitsu. Same thing for kickboxing or anything else. But
Sure.
secondarily, he could learn any type of footwork or use certain techniques that most guys would be afraid to use for fear of getting taken down. Because he's like,
Hmm.
"Fuck you, take me down." Well,
Great
good luck.
point.
Yeah, like you're you're
Come
you're
to
you're
deep
screwed.
water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're screwed. And he has the submission victories to prove that. Also, it's not just like hypothetical. Like he was totally dangerous off his back. Now, yeah, there's truth. Obviously, getting punched will change it. Some guys have the type of game where they're really good at just tying you up, neutralizing strikes, and either reversing you or submitting you off their back. And also, there's an element of respect. Like sometimes if a guy, and this is the philosophy, maybe you respect your opponent too much. Like you could be in the guard of someone who's so good at jiu-jitsu that you don't want to ground the pound. You just want to get out of there. But now you're not punching them, and now they're
Yeah.
actually advancing their jiu-jitsu, right? And
Sure.
so it's a weird thing. Do I stay here and punch him and deal with this guy's best strength, or do I try to get the hell out of there? But in the process of getting out of there, I'm not giving him anything to worry about, you know. So there's a lot of different
It's a chess
philosophies there.
match.
But back then, jiu-jitsu wasn't nearly as well developed as it is now. If you look at sport jiu-jitsu from that era, the guy who got on top in competition pretty much always won. The guard wasn't evolved to where it is now. Guys have phenomenal guards now. It's completely different. Meaning that if you were a Kerr or a Coleman and you got on top of someone, they're in a lot of trouble. All you needed was some very
Yes.
basic submission defense, some good hand fighting, and just some basic principles to just avoid. Basic situations to avoid. Don't let your opponent get a 2-on-1 on one wrist. Don't let him break your posture down here. And you could dominate people, especially when you're that strong and that explosive. And obviously, a collegiate wrestler is going to be phenomenal at using their weight. We're not talking about people that don't know how to pin or control,
Yeah.
also. But Kerr, he's a fascinating dude. He's there's something so endearing about him. You cheer for him the whole time. In the documentary, when he kicks the opioids, he dumps his girlfriend, he starts training with Boss Rutan again. He comes back and he beats Ensign Inoue. You're like loving it, and then
I did.
when you see the girlfriend at their practice watching, and you see him drinking beers leading up to the fight, like your
Yeah.
heart just breaks. You're just like, oh no, like, dude, you just worked so hard to get past this. And, even though I knew the outcome, I remember the 2000 Grand Prix. That event had one of the most famous fights of all time. We'll get to that later, but it was a big deal, not just because of Kerr and Coleman. There was an insane fight, historic fight that occurred at that event. But like I knew he was going to lose, but like as the viewer, as a viewer who doesn't know the outcome of the tournament, you see it coming too. You're just like,
Yeah.
oh come on, like what are you doing?
I know. What are you
And
thinking about?
in the movie, Emily Blunt plays Dawn, and there are some things in the movie that are only referenced in the documentary, and then some things that were just kind of like written in. That maybe they're stories that Mark Kerr told them, but they're not in the documentary per se. And she plays a terrifyingly good crazy bitch. Like it makes you really uncomfortable. And it's turned up a little more than what's in the documentary, but
Yeah.
just the look on her face, like when she's pining for attention before the Vovchanchyn fight, and he's literally sitting there like wrapped up, gloves on, trying to focus, and you could tell that she's frustrated that he's not looking at her. And there's the voiceover of Mark Coleman. He's like, I always tell guys not to bring their wives to the fights. It just takes too much
Yeah.
concentration. And I'm watching this and I'm like, you can have your wife in the dressing room, bro?
Terrible
Not
idea.
even your wife, your crazy
Yeah.
girlfriend? Like, are you,
Yeah.
dude, dude?
I mean, I know. Yeah, Mark Coleman had some pretty profound statements throughout that movie, actually. He openly admitted that the sport left him behind
Hmm.
at a certain point in his career, and then
Yes.
he caught up a little bit. He said that the skill set's evolving, the competition is becoming more and more stiff. That really makes a big difference, and I haven't really upgraded my skill set to match what's happening here. And then, like you said, he carried on his career for 10 more years, so he must have leveled up in some respects. One thing I thought made the biggest difference between Mark Kerr and Mark Coleman was Mark Coleman had children. So,
Yes. I'm glad you said that.
now you and I, as dads, if you're fighting to feed people who are not you, and you're not just like listen, when you're an adult, let's say you're single and you have a girlfriend or a wife and you're drinking and doing all this, the stakes are lower. It's just your health you're dealing with. It's
Hmm.
just your livelihood and your health and your food consumption you're dealing with. When you have to feed other people, when you have to clothe other people, you will scratch and claw and fight. It's like a famous Fedor Emelianenko line. He said, "I was very poor when I was young. When I'm in the ring, I look at the other person and I think that they're trying to take my children's food from them, that they're trying to take my money and my livelihood. And then you can see what happens after that. For 10 years, the man didn't lose. So
Yeah.
that mindset does make a big difference in how you dissociate from this person's a human being. Now, this person's a threat to my family's livelihood. And that's all you need to know. And that's, I think, probably the biggest fire you'll ever need to fight someone and, not kill them, obviously, but do the best you can to get close.
Yeah. Kerr didn't, he later had a son. I think it was like after his competitive career, at the very least, after he'd kind of lost the fire to do it. With Coleman, you literally see someone who had already overcome adversity prior to the filming of the documentary, or at least during the documentary. And that's kind of the big story to me of the Smashing Machine, is how these two guys each dealt with adversity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Kerr was kind of broken by it. It was just a little bit too much for him. Where Coleman, he had some major struggles later in life, but he rose to the challenge. Winds up winning the tournament, is like a huge deal. And that last and important note, he wins the tournament by stopping his opponent. I think he beat Vovchanchyn in the finals. And it's significant because it's significant for a lot of reasons, but here's how crazy this was back then. That last fight it was scheduled for unlimited rounds.
Really.
You have to stop your
Just
opponent.
someone has to win.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
I like
going in
that.
there with that pressure, like we could be fighting for fucking 10-minute rounds or whatever it was going to be. Like, this is madness, So he didn't
Yeah.
just like wrestle fuck Vovchanchyn. Like, he put him away. Like, he stopped him. He won the fight.
He gave him, they were in like a north-south position, and he gave him, I mean, 15 to 25 unanswered knees to the head. And then the Japanese ref's just like,
Yeah.
you doing good? Like, like, they don't even care. Japanese people don't give a fuck about brutality in those sports. Obviously, in those sports, like back then, it was like more brutality, more vicious, the better. The crowd loved it. But these days, after one or two, I mean, first of all, there's no downed knees to opponents' heads, but after one or two unanswered blows like that, the brain damage these guys must have after so many years of getting hit like that,
Oh
like
yeah.
the classic highlights of Coleman where he gets kneed in the face and he just kind of like shakes it off in the UFC, and then moments later, because he's so gassed and already probably disoriented,
Yeah.
he gets a round kick. I mean, right across the nose.
Yes.
Why would you ever come back to fight? I would never come back to fight if that was how somebody put me away. Unless you just can't feel it because you're so
That's
you're
probably
so
what
rocked, you
happened.
don't.
That's
Yeah.
probably what happened. Yeah.
Just watching that back, oh my god! Like,
Yeah.
a
Yes.
head kick. It was like a T-ball head kick. Like
Yes.
somebody propped him up and somebody just opened up with no. You don't have to time it. You
No
don't have to do
fear
anything.
of anything. Yeah, just
Yeah.
everything. That
Oh
was
my
Maurice
God.
Smith that finished him that way and gave him like every single ounce of what he had in that kick.
That
That
was a
wasn't like
vicious head
I'm
kick.
trying to disorient you, or I'm hitting you with timing. It was like this guy's pinned
Yes.
against the cage. He can't move. I'm going to, as a professional kickboxer, throw everything I have between my power leg and just he's lucky he's alive. Honestly,
He
from something
is.
from
He
something like
is.
that. Like that's like a Rocky 4 tier beatdown. Like that shit killed Apollo Creed, basically. Like
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
literally like that level of beating. Yes.
I'm surprised that the guys from that era of MMA don't have like the Chris Benoit fate or
Oh, they do.
uh
They
they
do.
do. They
Well,
do? I haven't heard about
not
that in
the
the
killing,
tabloids.
but the CTE is real. These guys
Okay.
have serious CTE. Gary Goodridge has spoken about it. He was like a legend from that era, fought in the UFC and in Pride. Obviously, I hate even saying this out loud, but Chuck Liddell does not sound very good. Okay.
His speech has definitely
His
declined
speech has
for sure.
declined. There's a lot of like, Mark Coleman he's kind of he's kind of a madman now. Like he's not
I haven't
like,
heard him speak
yeah,
lately.
he's still a legend. He's lovable. I think recently he like saved a family from a burning house or something. Yeah,
Really?
like literally, and he wound up being hospitalized from it, and like he came back okay. God bless him. But he's obviously a little bit worse for the wear. The couple things that save us from the knowledge of this, which is first of all, the UFC does a great job of not pointing these things out. That's the first thing. Second
Yeah.
thing is a lot of the fighters back then were Japanese or Brazilian. You can't tell like their speech pattern if you don't speak the fucking language.
That's
Okay.
fair. That's
So
fair.
you don't know. Like I would imagine like Vanderlei Silva's never had a great grasp of English. Okay.
Yep.
I would imagine he's got some problems. He took some beatings, dude, some serious beatings.
So
So
much fun to watch him fight though.
there are
The axe
definitely
murderer.
guys
Oh my
that
god.
they're worse for the wear. And a
Yeah.
lot of the American guys from back then, not all of them, but a lot of them were wrestlers who systematically avoided a lot of the head trauma by virtue of their style.
That's true.
You,
That's
you,
true.
you know, most of the best American guys back then were people from wrestling backgrounds. And of course, they're all going to take shots, but it's a big difference when you're on your back and I'm punching you. And all you can do is punch up or submit me because, especially in MMA for a while, up kicks were illegal if you were on both knees. Even if you were on one knee, you can't up kick from the bottom. Now, if you're standing, different story. Okay. Also, in Pride later brought back knees to the head in that position. And that's why
I
it was
know.
it was notorious for some wrestlers struggled there because you would shoot, the guy would sprawl on you, and now in this sprawl position, I can knee you in the head. There's a much greater punishment. Where in the UFC, that's still illegal. So it doesn't
Yeah.
punish the double leg takedown nearly as much. But
No.
to your point, a lot of these guys, they're worse for the wear. I'm sure a huge amount of them have had opioid problems. I've been around a lot of pro fighters from that era. I will not name any names, and they're pretty much high all day on weed because they don't want to be on painkillers. You know what I mean?
It's a
And
better option.
yeah, it's a
It's a
better
better
option,
alternative
right? But they're
for sure.
high all day because they are fucked up, man. They are in pain, and you got to remember that was the experimental era of the sport. So you were a lot of times putting miles on your body for something that didn't even really help. That wasn't even that beneficial. You just didn't know. How much do we
Yeah.
lift? I don't
It's
know.
true.
How much do we run? I don't know. What type of striking sparring do we need to improve as wrestlers? Do we put the 4-ounce gloves on and go full speed? Is that okay? Do we put on the 16-ounce gloves, but does it impede our grappling too much? How frequently do we do these things? How frequently
Yeah.
do we fight? How do we cut weight? All of this stuff was completely new. Okay.
It's primitive
So
at that
it's
point.
very, very primitive. So a lot of guys put miles on their body simply by just not knowing what they were doing. The training wasn't efficient. Nowadays, we understand 5 5-minute rounds. We're going to develop you as a fighter. Most good coaches have a system they could put you into that will get you where you need to be. Back then, there was no system. It was just like,
People didn't
yeah,
understand pacing and not getting
no,
hurt. Like the shoot box guys are notorious for the Brazilian crew, just knocking people out in training all the time. Like that
all the
can't
time.
be good for your fight prep. Like if you
Yes.
just got knocked out a week ago by your sparring partner, like you're not going to be right. You're not going to be sharp, and you're not going to be able to take the blows that would keep you conscious in the fight.
Yes.
So
Ninja
people,
Hua
I
had
think
a
back
brain hemorrhage.
then, really,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I think back then, because of the lack of knowledge about training, people just thought more was better. Harder is better, like the Rocky montage mentality where, like, I have to
Hmm.
train as hard as I can until I'm gonna die. And sometimes that benefits you, I guess, but a lot of times you just get hurt. A lot of times you just get knocked out too much if you're sparring too hard. And in the long run, probably degraded these guys' ability to perform on the
Oh,
night,
dude,
on
of
the actual
course,
fight night.
of course. And on top of that, again, I'm not an MMA fighter. I never will be. I've had the privilege of being around a lot of MMA fighters. I've trained with, I've shared the mat and or trained with guys who have been world champions. Like I've just okay, you're
Cool.
free to train. All right, this is the next round. Like you're playing that game of musical chairs. And I think for some guys, hard training to, like you just said, they do it A, because that's maybe all they know, but B, dude, training to fight someone on an exact date at an exact time of equal skill and size is so fucking stressful that I think that they don't achieve sometimes mental peace unless they've pushed themselves to exhaustion. Like
It's
I
fair.
have to be
Confidence.
I have to work all of this nervous energy out of me just to feel an escape from the pressure of this fight. I'm so worried that I didn't put the work in and this guy did. I got to go, 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 go. It's very hard in training to
Yeah.
learn how to pull back because you're a competitive person, you're an athlete, you're worried you're not doing enough. That's how most great world champions think. It's not easy to pull back. It's really, really hard. A lot of guys, they spar way too hard because they're worried that if it's not turned up in training, it won't be there when they get into the cage, right? And of course, you pay for that dearly. I mean, famously, I think when Forrest Griffin got knocked out by Anderson Silva, it came out sometime later that he had been knocked out a week or two before in training. Colt, right? And that's how Anderson knocked him out with a jab going backwards, right? He was cooked.
Got
He,
it.
he
There it
shouldn't have
is.
been there, like
Yeah.
I mean, Anderson probably beats him anyway, but come on, man.
Sure,
Like,
but not like that. That was
yes,
bad.
yes,
And
especially
it
for
was
someone
hard
who's
to
taken so many
explain.
punches.
It was hard to explain in the moment because Forrest was such a tough guy, like a
Hmm.
legendary for how much abuse he could take. So like
Yeah,
a jab when Anderson was moving backwards was the last thing you'd ever think would
exactly.
put him down.
Yes.
Like you thought it was rigged. That's how, but it turns out he was concussed.
Yeah.
He was already concussed coming into that
Hmm.
fight. So it makes much more sense now, understanding that he was already damaged goods walking
Now,
into the cage.
with that said, just briefly talking about the Dwayne Johnson and the Smashing
Yeah.
Machine movie. Now, it's by far the best MMA movie that's ever been made. That's not saying much, admittedly. Okay, this is not like they're competing with Rocky. Okay, it's not on the level of the Rocky movies or something to that effect. Okay, but have you seen the movie Miracle?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah. The
the
hockey team in
it's
the
on the
80s.
1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team,
Yeah.
and in retrospect, this seems like common sense, but this movie came out when we were like in high school. Uh, they obviously for that movie they didn't really hire actors, they hired hockey players, because how the fuck are you going to teach an actor to play hockey that well to make it
That
realistic?
well.
Okay, which is why the best actor in the movie is not coincidentally the goalie, because they can put a fucking mask on him and put him on the
Kurt
ice.
Russell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yes, exactly. Kurt Russell, and then the best player actor was the goalie because he can wear a mask, so no one will even know that
Okay.
it's not him. Okay, it's the
Got it.
easiest thing to do. Okay, so in this movie, I would say almost every fighting role that I could think of offhand was played by a real fighter. Okay. Igor Vovchanchyn was played by Alexander Usyk, who is presently the best heavyweight boxer in the world. Okay. Mark Coleman was played by Ryan Bader, who, was a top level MMA fighter. He's fought in the UFC and Bellator. I believe he won the Ultimate Fighter, probably 15, 20 years ago now. Um, Satoshi Ishii, who is a gold medal Japanese judoka. He plays, I want to say, Ensign Inoue. I forget who played Kazuyuki Fujita. Offhand, I don't remember, but they had real fighters in every role, of course, except the role of Mark Kerr, played by Dwayne Johnson. Now, the rumor was, or the story is, that Dwayne Johnson literally left his family for 3 or 4 months and locked himself away somewhere and trained all day every day for this role. Now, as a wrestler, as a fighter, I felt he did not take me out of it at all. Like, his takedowns were believable. He clearly studied Mark Kerr's game. Like, it wasn't like he just learned basic folk style wrestling. Like, he shot the shots like Kerr did. Kerr was not a great striker. Back then, most guys did not integrate striking and wrestling particularly well, especially today. So it's acceptable that Dwayne Johnson would be a little stiff on the feet and kind of have some bad fundamentals because that's kind of how Kerr was, at the
Yes.
time. So that's totally acceptable. But perhaps most impressively, his body was as close to identical to to another person's body as you could be without literally sharing their genetics. Now he
Yeah.
wore, facial prosthetics, whatever. But what was so crazy to me was that he even had like the same symmetry and proportions as Kerr. Like when you look at The Rock's physique, he doesn't usually have the type of shoulders that Mark Kerr had. Okay. He doesn't
It's true.
usually have the type of legs that Kerr had. Kerr, you're not going to be squatting 750, 800 pounds and pulling damn near the same weight without some serious thigh muscle. And Kerr also always wore those like short, tight, they call them Valley Tudo shorts. So you saw the legs just boom, just right there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And The Rock physically looked as close to Mark Kerr as you could be without being really his twin brother, especially from the neck down. Very, very
Yeah.
impressive. And
Yeah.
I would, to me, it's obvious the reason that The Rock has now lost a ton of weight. He's downsized substantially. Uh, First and foremost, I would gather at damn near 50 years old, if not over 50, getting as big as he had to be to play Mark Kerr, probably not the best thing for his health. You got to keep in
Right.
mind, in order to look like Mark Kerr visually, he had to be heavier than Mark Kerr because The Rock is like 6'4", 6'5". Okay.
Yeah, proportionally to thicken himself out or fill in
Yes.
his
Yeah.
frame. So he
He
probably had to
he
be 280,
I would say
maybe.
280 to 300 pounds. Easy.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
He is enormous in that movie. And of course, because the camera technology has gotten better, and it's a Hollywood movie, so it can be shot in a much more structured way. Like the scenes where, like, for example, after he loses to Vovchanchyn and he storms back, and you just see what he looks like close up, and he's just in the fight shorts. It's exactly like the movie. Like the whole scene with the referee where he's like, bad referee, bad referee. Like
Yeah.
it's all in the movie. Like you see how big he is and you're like, dude, it's very impressive that you look like this, but at your age I think you're pushing it, pal. Like in
Yeah.
terms of like health perspective.
Does Dwayne Johnson capture, like, his soft-spokenness, and does he really do that well,
He
that part
does
of
the
it,
best he
besides the
can.
fight skill part?
He does the best he can. There are some parts in the movie when he argues with Dawn, played by Emily Blunt, and he can't keep that soft effect under control when he raises his voice. So
Yeah, but
he
also,
clearly sounds like The Rock.
we never saw in the documentary them really fight and him
Yes.
actually go back at her, though. So
Yes.
we don't get a maybe he did sound different when he fought and he yelled at
It's a
people,
good
and
point.
so
It's
there
a good
could
point.
be another side to him that we didn't get to see in the documentary
Hmm.
that we'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
And so he does his best to capture it. The scene where he's talking to the old lady in the doctor's office is
Yeah.
in the movie. It's like it's in the trailer. It might be the
Is
best
it
scene
word
in
for
the whole
word?
movie. Almost. Almost.
Okay.
It's right there. They changed
Yeah.
some of the language a little bit, but it's pretty much right there. There's a lot of uncomfortable scenes with him, injecting himself with opioids and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. His overdose is covered in length. It's a little bit different. They make Mark Coleman kind of like an amalgamation of multiple characters. So like in the documentary, it's Kerr's friends from back home that go see him in the hospital. In the movie, it's Mark Coleman.
Okay.
Okay, you know what I mean? So they don't they take away some of the extemporaneous characters and they kind of even put more emphasis on Mark Coleman. Now,
Okay.
it's still extremely uncomfortable. There are stories that Kerr has told over the years and that Boss Rutan has told over the years that they put in the documentary. Okay.
Okay.
So the scene that referenced in the documentary where she pulls out his gun is actually on screen in the movie. She puts a
Okay.
gun to her head. Okay. Um, Boss Rutan has told the story many times where Boss had to retire from like chronic, brutal tendonitis pain. Okay, that ran him out of the sport at a very young age. And he basically said he had to stop training for a while because even if he was just hitting a heavy bag, it would pop up out of nowhere and he would be in excruciating pain for hours on end. And he tells a story that is in the movie where he's doing ground and pound drills with Mark Kerr, and he's laying into this bag, Ian. I mean, Boss is full sending it. I mean, the dude's like 60 years old. He would still kill you if he hit you.
Oh yeah,
easily kill you if he would hit
yeah.
you. Okay. And the tendonitis comes on, and he's holding his arm, and he's gripping. And Mark Kerr, without missing a beat, has opioids in his bag, takes it out, and injects Boss to get the pain to go away. And Boss looks at him, and he's like, "You just told on yourself." And Kerr's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Now I know why you're always sweating. You're always fucking high," because he feels the warmth of the opioids hit him, and
Oh
and and,
wow.
and he's like, "Now I know that you were fighting on that shit because of how much you were sweating before you went out there." You know what I mean? So like that's something that Boss has told that story many times over the years, and so like it's cool to see it kind of reenacted. Um, some of the training scenes they're pretty much there. They're like borderline identical. And I mean
Who
obviously the
plays
ending is the
Boss
same.
Rutan?
What? Boss plays
Who
Boss
plays
Rutan.
really?
Yeah.
Uh,
Who else could
that's
you get?
cool.
Who else could dude?
Nobody. I was
It's
gonna say
it's
like
it's
Colin Farrell.
impossible.
Colin Farrell has a similar facial structure to Boss
Yes,
Rutan, so
yes.
you could
No, but
probably.
Boss is still in good enough shape to move. So like, he's still tremendously athletic. He's on like TRT now, so he's like jacked. Like he looks
He looks the
fucking
same as he
yeah.
did then. I
Yes,
mean,
and he's
uh,
just in phenomenal shape. He has acting experience. So no brainer. Just put Boss Rutan in the movie.
yeah,
Like just
yeah.
absolute no brainer, slam dunk. And he crushes it. He plays the trainer. They also have him with Mauro Ranallo, not Mauro Ranallo, Stephen Quadros doing all of the play by play for all of the
Okay,
fights, like doing the same play by play. They reconstructed the entire Pride Arena. Like
that's
Boss
cool.
Boss Rutan said that when he showed up, he like freaked the fuck out because like he was the Pride play color guy, hugely famous for that. He got like emotional. Like he walked in and it was like the Tokyo Dome or the Saitama Super Arena. Like they had everything. Like the lighting was the same. Like the fashion of the ring announcer, like the whole nine. And so Boss
That's
is
cool.
doing the announcing. He's also training Mark Kerr. I thought that The Rock did as good of a job as somebody could expect him to do. Now I would say that the script I think wasn't great. I think that they could have done a lot more with Kerr's story.
Okay.
Uh, and I also felt like I don't know. When you hear about his story and about how part of the reason he decided to start fighting was, he sees on TV Mark Coleman winning the UFC heavyweight championship and Kurt Angle becoming an Olympic gold medalist while his mother is dying. Okay. And his mother was like, "I don't ever want you to fight." And he's promising her, but he knows that he has this skill set. He has to do something about it. Like, it would have been compelling to see that part of his life, his decision to get into MMA.
Sure.
Instead, it starts pretty much the same way. It starts with him kind of doing that monologue about, spreading open the cut and doing all that other stuff. And it's good. It's like I said, it's definitely the best MMA movie ever. If you're an MMA fan, you'd really, really like it. The fighting is convincing. I thought that Usyk was terrifying as Igor Vovchanchyn.
Yeah.
Being a heavyweight champion, like still in his prime, dude. There's a scene during the Grand Prix where all the fighters are in the same warm up room. I think it's after the Kerr Vovchanchyn fight. I think it's like the next when they're actually in the tournament. The Vovchanchyn fight wasn't part of the tournament. It was just like a random fight, and he sees Kerr's body language, and he turns to one of his training partners. He's like, he's scared. But the way he says it, like the look in his eyes, you're like, oh fuck, like, oh, I don't want that guy knowing that about me. Like, it was just, but that's a guy he's still fighting. Like he is in his prime now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he beat Tyson Fury, who outweighs him by 60 pounds. Right. So, I
Oh,
mean, we're talking about an
absurd.
incredible
Yeah.
specimen, but The Rock, and just got to be honest about this, The Rock has danced around the steroid question for his entire career. As I've said before, it's kind of a Hulk Hogan thing where you tell the lie once and then you just have to keep telling the lie over and
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
Or a Lance Armstrong thing. But let's put this in real simple terms, Ian. Mark Kerr needed steroids to look like Mark Kerr. You're not going to play Mark Kerr convincingly and not take anabolic steroids.
And
Okay.
put on 40 pounds.
At age
Probably,
49 years
right?
old, whatever you want,
Yeah.
50
Come on.
years old. Okay.
Yeah.
Not to mention, you could make an argument that if you got someone with like Ronnie Coleman's genetics, okay, that he could kind of look that way. But Mark Kerr is a genetic specimen himself. His nickname
Yes.
was the specimen, the smashing
Yeah.
machine and the specimen. So it's not like you can just get some genetic freak and shoot him with some good lighting and like have him train for 18 months for the role. Like, talking about a guy that was a genetic freak and he took steroids. There's
Yeah.
no way to get around it. You have to take steroids to look like Mark Kerr. It's impossible to do it any other way. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Can't be done.
Yeah.
It is. It's just real simple, straightforward.
I mean, look at The Rock when he was in his 20s in the WWE, and then when he started doing movies, what was the first movie he did? It was that jungle movie with
So Walking
Stifler.
Tall.
No, it was not that one. It was probably one of my favorite Dwayne Johnson movies, actually. Oh man, what's the name of it? The Rundown. The Rundown. He has to basically he's like a bounty hunter.
Yes.
I think his first big movie and my favorite of all the movies he's done. And he's big in that. He's Jack. But then later on, years later, you see him in Fast and the Furious series, and he is enormous. And it's probably he's got to be at least 40 when he starts those movies. Like
Mm-hmm.
to tell normal people that you don't just lift a little more and get that jacked all of a sudden in your late 30s, early 40s. That's just it's a telltale sign that you're on lots of gear. And I think he wants to be a role model, Dwayne Johnson. Like, he doesn't want to be frowned upon or kind of a dark light shed on him because
Mm-hmm.
he's taking drugs and it's a frown. But Batista, they're all on steroids at some point, and now they say they're
Of
banned
course.
it. But the spectacle is how freakish they look.
Of course.
That's part of it. Unless
Of
you're
course.
7'4", like some of these guys are, like you have to take drugs to look a certain way. Way back when they were still on drugs and they had that like beer belly look, like a Ric Flair. Like I'm
Yes.
sure Ric Flair was on steroids, but he
He's
just didn't
admitted
look
it.
it.
He's
He just
admitted it.
didn't look it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, besides the look of it in WWE, the steroids help you keep a certain physicality that, the aggression, the durability, to, like you said in podcasts, episodes in the past, they're on the road all the time. It's really hard on your body. The steroids probably give you a little bit of energy, a lot of energy, a lot of durability and resiliency, and let you get out there and perform at your best, even though you might not look like Batista. You could still get some benefit from the drugs. And I can't believe they banned it. I can't believe that.
Dude, I'm
Meaning,
sure it's a medical
I don't
exemption
actually believe
situation.
it.
I'm sure it's a medical exemption situation. I'm sure you could take high dose TRT.
But TRT is
Yeah,
that's the loophole.
yeah,
That's the
and
loophole.
get prescription stuff from compounding pharmacies and get around it that way.
Yeah,
It's just the wrestlers do look physically worse than they used to. So I do
yeah,
believe that the anabolic use has gone down. I don't deny that. There's way less like jacked freakazoids because wrestling had two freakish steroid eras. One was like the 80s, and then after the Vince McMahon steroid trial or during the Vince McMahon steroid trial, they started drug testing a lot of the wrestlers. So the guys either left the WWF or they shrank significantly. Okay.
got it.
After that era was over, starting in like that Attitude Era, pretty much up until the Chris Benoit murder suicide, the guys got huge again. Okay.
Yeah,
Because it was like
yeah,
breaks off, do whatever the hell you got to do. No one cares. And then, of course, after the Chris Benoit thing, because they found testosterone in his house, they're like, well, we have to ban this, which of course we know testosterone does not make you kill your whole family and then yourself. Like the guy
unless you're
was,
Ben Affleck.
of course, Ben Affleck would vouch
If you're
for
Ben
some,
Affleck,
yeah.
you're a super responder.
You're just taking your Anavar, just forking it into your mouth like it's a fucking. That's just the best, dude. It's the best.
So I do want to quickly share a picture of Mark Kerr and his physique because
Please
physique
do.
of the week wouldn't be physique of the week without a demonstration. Check this out. I mean, look at this guy. Tell me he's not on steroids. Tell me, like
It's
the
incredible.
traps. I'm so jealous of the traps. I think for me, traps are one of the most important muscles to develop. They just, no matter what the rest of your body looks like, if you have big traps, you are jacked. It just takes care of everything else. So my cousin has this, well, it's a true thing, and we've spoken about it. When your traps are bigger, your shoulders look more narrow. I think that's BS. I think traps make you automatically jacked. You just become in a jacked category when you have big traps. And if you're lean enough for them to show like from behind, like when you're walking and so you're lean so they can be traced down your mid back, That's jacked. And you can see it a lot in the movie, actually. When he's walking to the ring and he's got no shirt on, you can see how low, because he's so defined, he's so lean, how low you can track the traps. But look at his delts. It's crazy.
He's so huge, dude. Huge legs too. I mean, just
Yeah.
like fully developed. Like this is by his own admission, this is overkill for MMA. Like it's
Yeah.
just too much. Like he wrestled at 197. Okay, yes, Randy Couture also fought at heavyweight. He weighed 230.
Yeah.
Okay, like he made 205. Anthropometrically, Randy Couture is probably even closer to a middleweight in terms of reach and everything else. He just didn't want to do any extreme weight cuts. Okay, Kurt Angle, I think he won his Olympic gold medal. I want to say like 220, and he was like light, like didn't cut weight. His style was conditioning based. It was all pace just to
Okay.
tire out the bigger, stronger guys. So, like, for him to be doing the volume of training required to be an elite wrestler, he had to be around 200 pounds at around my height. Okay. So even me now, I am effectively bigger than Mark Kerr was as a collegiate wrestler. Okay.
Wow.
So to put on 45 plus pounds of pure contractile tissue, I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it's impossible to think that you would have done it any other way, and it is
Yeah.
overkill. It is too big. I mean, you look at someone like Brock Lesnar as an example. Yes, Brock is a huge person. Yes, Brock is one of the most freakishly talented athletes we've ever seen. But look at the size of Brock Lesnar's joints and hands compared to Mark Kerr, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a true heavyweight. Like wrists, elbows, like all of that, all of the structure is there
It's
that
robust.
that the muscle is not extemporaneous for his weight class. That's just what he
Yeah.
needs to exist to move around. Like that is a huge person. Okay, whereas
Yes.
Mark Kerr, he probably he's similar to my height. He's similar to my anthropometrics. Dude, if I take like a higher dose TRT and I get over 235, I notice that my cardio starts to go to complete shit. Okay. And he had referenced that he was fighting with like massive hypertension, like 150 over 100 blood pressure.
Jesus
Okay. And
Christ.
of course, in Japan, they don't care. It's like,
No.
have at it. You know what I mean?
I like the fake medical exams before the fights. Like, what are they gonna like? Taking his temperature if he has a fever. Like, what are you gonna? You're not gonna stop anything. You're not gonna forbid him from fighting. Like, the guy's about to get kneed in the head 25 times consecutively, and you're not gonna say shit about it. Like, so don't tell me, oh, you're 99.9 fever. Like, we're gonna stop the fight. Like, get out of
The
here.
people are already there, right? It's also like we're at fight
Yeah.
night. Like if you're not
Yeah.
dead, you're fighting. Like it's just even if you are dead, we may just
Yeah.
pop you up and throw you out there. But to give
A
you a
marionette.
yeah,
Like,
to give you a story about how completely insane Pride fighting was, and I referenced a historic event at that tournament. Uh, there was a Japanese fighter. His name was Kazushi Sakuraba. Okay, and he was known as the
the
Gracie
Gracie
Killer.
Hunter,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yes, Gracie
Gracie
Hunter.
Killer.
Yes, okay. So at that point, he'd beaten Hoyler Gracie, who was much smaller than him. Hoyler was a lot smaller, but Hoyler had like really almost never lost in MMA. Okay, he beat him by technical submission. He like destroyed Hoyler's arm at the end of the fight, and the ref stopped the fight. So Hoist Gracie entered this competition to defend the honor of the Gracie family. Hoist wins like a totally bogus uh first round decision because they wanted him to fight Sakuraba so badly. But Hoist would not fight him unless it was 15-minute rounds, unlimited rounds.
That was his terms.
Yeah. So Sakuraba said, sure, fuck it. Okay. And he fought him that night in for 6 15-minute rounds.
Oh my God.
Okay. And Hoist, like Sakuraba basically figured out that like Hoist couldn't stop leg kicks. And so like he was kicking Hoist's legs and Hoist would started falling back onto his guard and he started kicking the shit out of his legs while he was in the guard to the point of where he could not walk anymore. And the Gracies eventually threw in the towel. And Sakuraba, of
Wow.
course, was completely incapable of finishing the tournament. You just fought for
Of course.
90 minutes. It's
Of
over,
course.
dude. Like you
Yeah.
shouldn't even exercise for like 6 months. Like it's a wrap. Like
Yeah.
you need IVs and like what you need to like not move for a long time. But
Yeah.
that fight, there's literally a 90-minute break in the action for everybody else for these two psychos to fight for an hour and a half. 6 15-minute rounds. I personally love the fight, but of course, neither one of these guys are idiots. They're pacing themselves. Like,
Of course.
you burn
Yeah.
that out too quickly. There's no coming back from this. It's a
So
wrap.
it's not action packed. It's
It's
very
very technical.
measured,
It's
very paced.
interesting. Hoist decided to wear a gi for the fight, and Sakuraba was like grabbing him and like bullying him around by the gi to like try to like you could snap someone down with your head. That's nothing compared to that fabric getting snapped down. The grip you have
So
on fabric is just like you could really control somebody with a gi. And for whatever reason, Hoist felt that the gi gave him more friction and would probably help him play guard better. That Sakuraba would be
oh
unlikely to be able to just pull out with sweat. But
okay.
Sakuraba was like hockey fighting him, dude. Like grabbing him by the gi and just like punching him in the face. As
Yeah.
I'm watching this, I'm like, dude, take it off. You're crazy. Take it off. This
Between
is
rounds, I'm sure it
yeah,
wasn't against the rules. There
yeah,
were no rules. Yeah.
exactly. Like this is insane. Take the fucking thing off. You have no chance.
Yeah.
Like it's completely crazy. But that is a hugely historic event. And one thing that I loved about the movie, very famously, when Mark Coleman won the 2000 Grand Prix, he went so crazy that he tried to jump on the ropes and he fell and busted his ass. Okay,
Really?
like yeah, he's like because he was the stress of it, the release. So when the Coleman character played by Ryan Bader wins, I sit up on my chair and I'm like, if he doesn't bust his ass, this movie is fake and gay. It gets a 0 out of 10. And he did it. He busted his ass the exact
Did he?
same way. He had it down to like the moment. Like it was perfect. And I'm like, you know what? You committed.
Also, when you
I'll
have
take it.
actual fighters as actors in that portrayal, like they're gonna do it the way it should be done. Like
Yes.
if you have just a Hollywood, you know, Hollywood actor who never fought a day in his life, has no pride for the sport, they're not gonna really. They might nail it because they're a good actor, but that sense of detail and those little
For sure.
nuances
For
are from
sure.
fighters who
They
want to
did
do it justice.
even I remember Coleman won one of his first fights in the tournament. He fought some fat Japanese dude, and Coleman just kept clinching him and was just punching him in the kidney. Like, dude, like he must have hit him like 75 times. And by the end of the fight, this midsection was purple, right? That that detail was in the movie. Like
Yeah.
like like the guy was midsection. Like they kept up with what actually happened in the fights. I think they perfectly captured the bizarre, like kind of cowboy spirit of it, and I think that they captured, with Mark Kerr, just the true fact that these are humans getting in there. You lose sight of this. If you don't know
Yes.
someone who's a fighter, like knowing people, having friends and clients that fight mixed martial arts, it's actually really changed my ability to enjoy the sport because when you're in an audience and you're watching and you're sitting next to someone's mom and that guy is getting his ass kicked, they're no longer
Yeah.
pixels on a screen. It's no longer like I'm just watching Fedor execute somebody and it's like, ha ha ha, that's awesome. Like you
Yeah.
start to see the human side of it. And I think that that's like the one takeaway from this movie is like, there is serious costs to this. And a lot of times these guys are doing this type of thing and they don't even know what the costs are. Hey, let me take some fucking opioids to get through this fight camp. Well, now you're a drug
Yeah.
addict. Okay.
Yep.
Like let me take a huge amount of steroids to give me a performance advantage. Well, now you have heart disease, or now you
Yep.
lose fights because you have no conditioning. Like, let me associate myself. Let me go. This is another thing that was crazy. Let me go lift weights with my girlfriend in my fight camp. You're gonna lose. Okay, like you're gonna like this is like you're gonna lose. Okay, like
Yeah. Yeah.
the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people and the understanding that high caliber athletes will do whatever it takes to win, no matter what the cost is. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, what is the cost? And
Yeah.
when it's all said and done, okay, what are they paying for now that the cameras are off? Only they know, and
Yeah,
it's
but
very
question
tough.
for you. Last question before we sign off. How old was Mark Kerr and Mark Coleman in that movie or in their prime in that pride fighting days? Were they early 20s, late 20, no, late 20s?
Kerr had to be. Coleman was a little older. Coleman wrestled in the '92 Olympics. Okay,
Oh,
so I
wow.
have it right here. Well, Kerr was born December 21st, 1968. So he is in his 30s at the peak of this, but he starts fighting in his
Okay.
mid 20s. Okay,
Okay.
Coleman was definitely a touch older. He fought until he was in his early to mid 40s.
Okay.
Um, but he was like the class of wrestlers ahead of Kerr. Okay, so Kerr would have been someone who was probably it's pretty much the exact class. Coleman was born in 64, December 20th, 1964. So almost same
Wow.
calendar day. Okay. So Coleman is 35, 36 years old in this. Okay.
Wow.
Keep in mind, he goes on to fight 10 more years. Okay.
Crazy.
Kerr's 4 years younger. Uh, I think that ultimately Coleman got more out of his abilities than Kerr. I mean,
Probably.
Coleman,
Longevity alone
he
will
made
help
it to the
that.
Olympics in 92. Kerr
Yeah.
never qualified for the Olympics. Okay. He obviously was UFC heavyweight champion, Pride Grand Prix champion. His name was on the marquee for much longer. He was able to make more money. I mean, he lost some pretty brutal fights, towards the end of his career, but nevertheless, like he stayed in the game and stayed in
Yeah.
shape. Kerr really let himself go. If you see some of his fights, even in like '03, you're just like, get this out of here. It's really hard
Yeah.
to watch.
Yeah.
And you could tell he doesn't want to be there. You know what I mean? But guys, there's a cost for everything, and there's a cost even for The Rock to play this character. You know, and like you have to ask yourself, like, okay, I want to be that big. At least The Rock did it for money. At
It's
least The
true.
Rock did it
A lot of
because he
money.
wanted to be taken seriously as an actor and get an Oscar, and not just be an action hero guy. So for him, this was part of his legacy. But if you're just doing this to look good at the pool, what are we doing here? There's other ways to look good.
It's
You
not
don't you
worth
don't
it.
have
It's
to
not
look
worth it.
like Mark Kerr or
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson in this movie. Yes, it's awesome. Yes, I wish I could look like that and have zero health downsides, but I can't.
Sure.
And at
Yeah.
some point you have to make a decision about that, right? But all in all, I think the Mark Kerr story is fascinating. Anyone who hasn't seen the original documentary, you owe it to yourself to go out and watch it. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic. So go watch it. Find it somewhere. It's on BitChute. It's a streaming website. BITCHUTE. The full length documentary is on there. Check it out, The Smashing Machine, and watch the movie. The movie is good. The documentary is great.
And the sad part is that The Rock made more money in that movie than Mark Kerr would have made in 110 fights
Probably, yeah.
and 20 Grand Prix wins.
Probably, yeah. Exactly, exactly. All right, guys, this is it for the week. Ian's got to go back. I got to take care of my baby. I'm getting a warning that he's not sleeping, and Ian's got to get back on daddy duty. So we'll be seeing you guys next week. God bless you all, and please pray for Ian because the man needs some sleep.